This all went down during the winter of my 8th grade year. I was on the cusp of becoming a high schooler, and it was shaping up to be one of the best winters of my life. I had 2.5 months of no school until I officially entered high school, and I planned to make the most of it. Most of my time was spent playing video games, sleeping in, or playing basketball with my friends on the snow-covered courts. It was a typical teenager's dream. That winter, I found myself home alone for an entire week. My parents thought I could handle it. I was a relatively good kid and they trusted me, so it wasn't a big deal for our family. My dad even gave me access to one of his credit cards for food in case I didn't want to eat what we had at home. I was stoked about having the house to myself. Some people told me it was pretty messed up for my family to leave me alone for that long, especially since I was barely 14. But I didn't see it that way. They didn't expect anything bad to happen, and neither did I. It was a rare occasion for them to be gone so long. This wasn't something they did often. In fact, I still live with my parents now, and I'm 19. Ever since that day, I haven't been home alone for more than 24 hours. It was a Friday night around 11 p.m. when my phone went off. I received a text from an unknown number that simply said, "Hey." I messaged back asking who it was. They became passive-aggressive, upset that I didn't recognize them. I apologized, explaining I'd lost all my contacts when I got a new phone a few months back. They still seemed upset, so I turned my phone on silent and continued playing PlayStation. About 10 minutes later, I heard a knock on my bedroom window. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but I decided to check. Peering through the blinds, I saw no one. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had indeed heard a knock. I checked the windows throughout the house, but there was nobody in sight. The silence of the snowy night only added to the eeriness. I took out my phone to call my mom and saw several messages from the unknown number. The most recent one read, "I'm here." My heart sank. I tried to call my mom, but my phone had no service, which was bizarre. We always had excellent cell reception at home. Terrified, I realized I was completely cut off. I wanted to message the person back, but I couldn't. I paced back and forth in the living room, jumping at every little sound. Suddenly, I heard noises outside. I ran toward the back patio and listened. Someone was screaming for help over and over. My heart raced. I thought it might be a setup, but I couldn't ignore the cries for help. Despite my fear, I decided to confront whoever was out there. I stepped onto the back patio, and everything went silent, except for the distant chirping of crickets.
"Hey, who's there?"
I yelled, trying to sound brave.
"Don't mess with me, man. You don't want to start something you can't finish."
Almost immediately, a bright light flashed at me from the distance. Our house sat on a large piece of land, and the backyard was vast, filled with trees. The light moved toward me, then suddenly turned off. The screaming resumed, more desperate than before. I grabbed my old baseball bat from the garage and headed toward the woods where I'd seen the flashlight. My anxiety skyrocketed as I approached the dark silhouettes of the trees. About 30 feet ahead, I saw a shadowy figure.
"Hey man, is that you?"
I called out, but there was no response. The figure then started running at me. In a split second, I turned and ran back to the house. I made it inside just in time, locking the sliding glass door behind me. The man was right there, pulling on the door. That's when I first stood face to face with this creep. He was tall, slender, and wore a wolf mask, holding a large hammer. I ran to my room, wondering why I hadn't defended myself with the bat, but fear had taken over. I tried my phone again, but still no service. I was furious, feeling like a victim in my own home. I waited, and soon enough he was knocking on my front door. I confronted him, telling him to see what would happen if he stepped inside. He just laughed. And let me tell you, I can't even begin to describe how that laugh sounded. You simply have to hear it for yourself, but it was the kind of laugh you'd expect in the creepiest of horror movies. I retreated to my room, and the knocking grew louder. Then I heard the living room window shatter. I hid behind my open bedroom door, bat in hand, ready to defend myself. I heard him downstairs, not grabbing any belongings, but moving with an eerie determination as if he was searching for me. Slowly, I heard him walking up the stairs. Every step felt like a knife stabbing into my heart. I couldn't believe I was in this situation. Even my nightmares weren't as terrifying as what was happening. First, he checked the bathroom, closing the door, and then proceeded to my parents' room. As he closed that door, the sound of his footsteps grew louder, approaching closer and closer until he was practically at my door. In that moment, I thought to myself, if this motherfucker takes one step inside, I'll fuck him up so hard, he'll wish he had never entered. I know it sounds extreme, but given the circumstances, it felt like the right response. Then, the moment arrived. He stepped into my room. He entered my room, and I struck him with the bat, knocking him to the ground. I hit him a few more times to ensure he wouldn't get up. I ran about 5 or 6 miles to my friend's house. They let me use their phone to call the police. The police arrived at my house and my friend's house. I called my parents, who were hours away. After the incident, I was taken to the police station for questioning. Sitting in that cold, sterile room, a sense of dread began to wash over me. The officers' questions started off routine, but as they delved deeper, I could feel something was really off. Then the bombshell dropped. They told me I had killed the man. Panic set in. I was still a minor, and the reality that I had taken someone's life, even in self-defense, was overwhelming. Yes, I killed a man as a minor. This fact haunts me to this day. The nightmares haven't stopped. They replay the blood, the screams, and that fateful moment over and over. I struggle with sleeping problems, waking up in cold sweats, haunted by the memories of that night. Every knock at the door sends a shiver down my spine, a jarring reminder of the terror I experienced. It all feels like it happened just yesterday, an ever-present reminder of that terrifying winter night. So this one time last year, I was chilling at home alone. It was this super cold winter night, and my parents were out visiting my grandparents for the weekend. I'm usually cool with being by myself, but that night it felt kind of spooky. Maybe it was the snowstorm that was whipping up outside. I was all cozied up in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, hot cocoa in hand, and watching some movie. The house was warm, a nice contrast to the blizzard raging outside. Earlier in the evening, I did my usual thing, checking all the locks on the doors and windows. But as the night went on, the wind outside started howling like something out of a horror movie. I tried to ignore it, but you know how it is when you're alone. Every little noise gets your imagination running wild. Then, out of nowhere, I heard this tapping sound. At first, I thought it was just tree branches hitting the window, but this tapping was different, more like someone was actually doing it on purpose. I paused the movie and just listened. The tapping was coming from the back door. My heart started racing. Who the fuck would be out there in this snowstorm? I said to myself. I tiptoed over to the kitchen, trying to be as quiet as possible, and peeked through the curtains. And there, in the darkness and the swirling snow, was this figure standing outside the door. Total freakout moment. We live pretty far out, and the nearest neighbor is miles away. I'm thinking, what the hell do I do now? Then I remembered my phone, but of course I'd left it charging upstairs. As I'm about to head upstairs, the tapping turns into this loud, urgent knocking. I'm rooted to the spot, my mind racing.
Do I confront whoever it is? Hide?
Before I can decide, I hear glass breaking from the kitchen. That's when I bolt upstairs, lock myself in my room, and grab my phone. My hands are shaking as I dial 911.
Hi, this is 911 emergency. How can I help you today?
I whisper into the phone, explaining the situation to the operator. They're like,
Stay put, help's on the way.
but they also say it might take a while 'cause of the storm. I'm crouched in the corner of my room, away from the door, just listening to every sound in the house. I can hear someone moving around downstairs, opening and closing drawers. I'm trying not to cry, but it's tough. The operator's voice is the only thing keeping me from totally losing it. Then I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. My heart's pounding like a drum. The footsteps stop right outside my door. There's this moment of dead silence. Then out of nowhere, the door handle starts to jiggle. I'm too scared to even breathe. The person tries the handle a few more times, then gives up and moves away. I'm just sitting there, not moving an inch until I hear police sirens. The footsteps rush downstairs, and a few minutes later, the cops show up. They find the back door busted open and the place a mess, but the intruder had taken off into the storm when they heard the sirens. The cops stayed outside until my parents got back. They never caught the guy, but they figured he was just looking for a place to crash and maybe swipe some stuff. That night totally changed me. I used to feel safe at home, but not after that. It took forever to get comfortable being alone again, but I got through it. Just goes to show, you never know what's going to happen, even in your own home. Alright, so I'm this 21-year-old guy living in this special village, right? It's for older folks or people with health issues, but you gotta be able to take care of yourself. Everyone's got their own little house, some with 1 bedroom, some with 2. My place? You walk in, there's the living room, dining room to the right, a path to the back porch, then the kitchen and a small hallway leading to the bathroom and bedroom. Oh, and there are closets in the living room and bedroom. Each house is kind of unique in its layout. Now let me spill about this wild thing that happened a couple of years back. I was hanging with friends during our social hour, and some were chatting about weird stuff happening at night, like knocking on doors and windows. One lady said someone even tried her door knob. We all thought it was probably just kids messing around from the nearby neighborhood. Our village is usually super chill and safe, so we didn't sweat it too much. Fast forward a few days, I had to go for physical therapy. I think I spaced out and forgot to lock my doors, but I wasn't stressing it. Our area is pretty secure. Even with the pandemic, our village is lively, with folks walking and chatting. It's like one big family here. So, I get back from therapy, totally wiped out, and crash for a long nap. Then I'm suddenly woken up by my neighbor, Eleanor. She's this sweet lady, like a second mom, who helps me set up my medical gear for the night. She used to be a nurse, and her husband Frank was a cop. They're pretty cool, and Eleanor even helped me convert to Catholicism a couple of years ago. During the day, we have staff to help with basic stuff, but a lot of retired nurses in the village lend a hand with medical care. It's a pretty tight-knit routine we've got. So I'm waking up from my nap, and Eleanor's like,
Hey there, I'm here to help you out.
but then she stops mid-sentence, grabs the IV bag, and heads over to my furnace. She tries to turn on the heat. She's all,
That's weird, your heat's not working. You can't sleep here without heat, not with your health. How about you crash at my place tonight?
I'm groggy from therapy and not really processing things, but I notice Eleanor's acting off. I've got a theater background, and I can usually tell when someone's putting on a show. She was good, but something was up. I felt nervous but decided to play along. I've got all my medical stuff near my travel bag, which fits everything. Eleanor packs it all up quick and helps me to the front door. I hear a noise from my walk-in closet and think it's just my cat, but with my health issues, getting scared is a no-go. It can mess with my breathing. Turns out Eleanor saw someone hiding in my closet when she was grabbing the IV bag. She made up the whole broken heater thing to get me out safe. I'm freaking out, wondering if that person was there the whole time I was gone or just snuck in. Then, out of nowhere, we see the man bolting out of my room, heading straight for the exit. Seeing this man running out of my room triggers this intense, sick feeling in my stomach. It's like everything inside me wants to come up. I'm filled with a barrage of questions and what-ifs.
What would have happened if Eleanor hadn't seen that man?
The thought alone sends shivers down my spine. So Eleanor gets me settled at her place, and I crash in the spare bedroom. But then, in the middle of the night, I wake up to tapping on the window. It's the guy from my closet. He's like,
I see you walk in there. I'm coming in one way or another.
I call for Eleanor and she wakes up Frank, who's still pretty intimidating even though he's retired. They both rush in. Frank's got his gun aimed at the window and Eleanor helps me hide in their master bedroom closet. I'm hooked up to my machines, totally freaked out and struggling to breathe. Eleanor's right there trying her best to calm me down. She's saying,
Take slow breaths, honey, slow breaths.
But man, it's hard. My heart's racing like crazy, and every breath feels like a battle. Meanwhile, Frank's right outside the door, dealing with the whole mess. I can hear him yelling, his voice stern and commanding. He's shouting, "Get off my property, I'm warning you." His tone is fierce, the kind that tells you he's not messing around. Frank's a retired cop, and he's got that authoritative vibe that makes you listen. Then, amidst all the chaos, I hear the distant sound of sirens. The police are finally here. But by the time they show up, the creeper, the guy who's been terrorizing us, he's vanished into thin air. They can't find him anywhere. The cops are searching around, and they find these cracks in the window of the spare bedroom. It's like this guy was trying to break in or something. The whole situation is just surreal. I'm there trying to keep my breathing steady, while Eleanor's doing everything she can to help me. And outside, the police are combing the area, looking for any sign of this intruder. But he's gone, disappeared into the night, leaving us with nothing but a damaged window and a whole lot of unanswered questions. It's a scary thought, knowing that someone was out there watching us trying to get in. And now, even with the police involved, he's just gone. It leaves this uneasy feeling in the air, like we're not as safe as we thought we were. The whole ordeal has shaken us up, and now we're just trying to make sense of it all, wondering if we'll ever feel completely secure again. So there I am, this 24-year-old woman, living my usual quiet life in my cozy house. My routine's pretty standard: work, home, dinner, and unwinding with some TV or a movie. It's Friday night, and I'm thinking of staying up a bit, watching a movie, though I often crash on the couch. I'm into this movie, it's around 8, and I slowly drift off. Then, suddenly, this sharp buzzing sound wakes me up. It's my phone, lighting up with a notification I don't recognize. I pick it up, and it's a Facebook message, which is odd because I rarely use Messenger. The message is from this guy, just a simple hello. His name seems familiar, but we're not close. I check his profile, one mutual friend, connected for about 4 months. I remember accepting his friend request, not thinking much of it. I reply with a polite hi, but it's strange to get a message so late. He responds quickly saying,
I love that movie too, we should watch it together.
I glance at the window. It's dark, snowing heavily outside. I can't see anything, but I'm shaking, realizing someone's been watching me. Another beep from my phone, another message from him. I'm too scared to read it. I'm frozen in fear until the doorbell rings, making me jump. Panic sets in, tears streaming down my face as I dial 911. I explain the situation, and they tell me to lock myself in a room and wait. My phone keeps beeping with messages from him, now in all caps, demanding I open the door. Then, a message that chills me to the bone.
Never mind.
Suddenly, I hear a soft bang from another part of the house. It's coming from the hallway near the kitchen, heading towards the basement. I rush to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. Another bang, something breaking. I'm crying, terrified, listening to the sounds of someone moving through the basement, then up the stairs. The basement door is always locked, but I fear he'll break through. The doorknob rattles, someone's pushing against it. Then, my phone rings. It's an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answer. A voice I don't recognize says,
Leave the house now through the back. It's not just him.
My heart races.
Who the fuck is this? How the hell do you know what's happening?
I answered in a panic. Then he hung up. I'm torn between staying put and running. The front door knocks loudly. Police, open up. I hear from outside. I hesitate, the unknown caller's warning echoing in my mind. But I decide to trust the police presence. I unlock the front door, revealing 2 officers. I quickly point them towards the basement. Guns drawn, they slowly enter the basement. I hear a commotion, then an abrupt silence. Finally, they emerge with the intruder, the same guy from Facebook caught red-handed.
His excuse? He just wanted to chat. But who was on the phone? How did they know about the danger I was in?
Since that message, I haven't received anything else. This all just happened a couple of weeks ago. I try to never be alone, always having a friend or family member with me. It's like I'm living in a constant state of fear, jumping at every unexpected sound. I hope things will get back to normal someday, but right now that seems like a dream far away. I'm a girl, and this happened when I was just 13 years old. It was around Christmas, and my parents and little sister had gone out shopping, leaving me home alone. I cherished these moments when I had the house all to myself. My sister's shoes were by the front door instead of the garage, as she had left through there. I closed the door behind her and went back inside. A week before this incident, a boy from the grade above me had approached me during school pickup, trying to strike up a conversation. I was never particularly social, and his attempts at conversation had become a regular occurrence. I usually gave brief responses and avoided any prolonged interaction. On one occasion, he asked for my phone number, but I politely declined. After some persistence, he eventually gave up and left me alone. Now, back to the first day of Christmas break. It was evening, and my parents and sister wouldn't be back for a few hours. I decided to unplug the living room security camera to have some privacy for a while. I wanted to do some weird stuff without the risk of my parents watching it later. About an hour later, when it had grown dark outside, I closed all the blinds and made myself some noodles. While eating, I settled in at the living room watching some TV. Once I finished my dinner, I paused the movie to grab a cookie, and that's when I heard it. Faint footsteps coming from outside the house. My heart raced as I held my breath, trying to discern if it was just the house settling or something else. The footsteps continued, sounding much closer now. It was unmistakably the sound of someone walking outside in our backyard. Panicked, I turned off the TV and grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. I quickly retreated to the bathroom, locking myself in. The pounding on the window, followed by eerie silence, only heightened my fear. Then I heard 2 voices outside, one male and one female. The silence went on for about 5 minutes. Carefully, I crept slowly toward the phone to call the police. But suddenly the landline rang, making me jump shit scareless. In the process, I dropped the knife, creating a loud echo in the living room. That's when a series of violent pounds struck the backyard door. I retrieved the knife and sought refuge in the small storage closet under the stairs. I had mentioned earlier that my sister left through the front door, and I closed it behind her. What I didn't realize at the time was that I had left the front door unlocked, a mistake that would haunt me. The front door opened and loud but slow footsteps entered the hall, sending shivers down my spine. I struggled to control my breathing, attempting to be as quiet as possible. I could hear the intruders moving through the house, their voices filled with anger. The male voice called out,
Where the hell are you, you little bitch? I know you're here.
It seemed oddly familiar, possibly the boy from school. As expected, the closet door swung open, revealing the girl. Without thinking, I slashed at her with the knife. She screamed, blood dripping on the floor, and she slapped me hard enough to make me fall. The woman fled the house, slamming the front door shut behind her. Minutes of tense silence followed as I gathered myself. I locked the front door and quickly cleaned the blood from the floor using soap and water. I hadn't reached the phone in time to call the police, but the intruders were gone, so there seemed to be no immediate danger. It was only later, as I contemplated the events, that I realized the boy hadn't left. I searched the entire house, knife in hand, turning on all the lights and checking every nook and cranny, but I found no one. I cleaned up the mess left behind by the intruders and tried to make everything appear normal. When my parents and sister returned about 45 minutes later, they found me watching TV, unaware of the terrifying ordeal I had just experienced. To this day, I've never told my family what happened. I was afraid they would never allow me to stay home alone again, and I valued my privacy too much to risk losing it. My message to everyone is to stay safe and to trust your instincts. Sometimes the smallest actions can make all the difference in a life-threatening situation. I'm a 22-year-old gal, and my boyfriend and I shared this house that had its fair share of quirks. The incident I'm about to spill the beans on went down in December 2022. Let me set the stage a bit for you. Our humble abode sat in a neighborhood that didn't exactly scream safety first, and there was always something bizarre brewing. Our house, smack in the middle of it all, faced this narrow alleyway that connected our backyard to the property next door. Now, the neighbors weren't exactly buddy-buddy types, as their place was front-facing and looking all fancy toward the main street. Our backyards were separated by this rusty chain-link fence with a gate. It was one of those emergency access-only deals, thanks to the house deed. You see, this alleyway was so tight that even my boyfriend's hulking pickup truck had to pull off some acrobatics just to squeeze through. And as if the universe itself wanted to keep us under wraps, our neighbor's parked car always had our house playing hide-and-seek from anyone trying to peep from the main street. Now, onto that chilly December night. It was just me at home, thanks to my boyfriend's surprise work call. The clock had just struck 10 p.m., and I figured, why not order some late-night grub from Applebee's? I know, late for takeout, right? But I had no clue my boyfriend would be out so darn long. Little did I know, I was in for the scare of a lifetime. I cozied up with my takeout, ready to catch up on some TV. And then it happened. A notification on my phone, courtesy of the motion sensor lighting camera in our backyard. Initially, I brushed it off, thinking maybe our neighbors were up to some late-night antics. But boy, was I in for a curveball. I glanced at the live feed and there he was, a man clutching what looked like a white plastic bag, crouched near our entrance gate. Another shady figure lurked on the opposite side of our yard, near a tree. Panic gripped me as I dialed my boyfriend and spilled the beans about the unwanted guests in our backyard. His voice urged me to play it cool, turn off the lights and hush our barking furballs. I scooped up our canine pals and sought refuge in the closet, waiting for my boyfriend's next call. Truth be told, I was too rattled to dial 911, so my boyfriend made the call on my behalf. And let's be real, I wasn't about to flip those lights off just in case someone out there was watching and figured out we weren't alone. As I waited in the closet, I kept a vigilant eye on the live camera feed, praying I wouldn't see those creeps again. At last, they disappeared from the screen. I replayed the footage, heart racing, only to notice something eerie. They'd entered our neighbor's driveway, slinked through the gate, and craftily as a fox, avoided setting off our camera as they approached our bedroom window. It was at this point that the motion-activated light flicked on, and the camera's robotic voice chimed,
Hi, you're now being recorded.
Our bedroom window, the biggest one we had, was right at the back of the house, and it would have been a piece of cake for them to boost themselves up and check if it was open. But thank the stars above, we had a hefty wooden dresser blocking their way, making any attempt at breaking in impossible. My boyfriend rang me back to deliver the news. The police were en route and instructed me to stay frosty. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted the blue and red flashing lights of the police cruisers in our backyard. They looked bewildered, trying to pinpoint which house was ours. I dashed out to meet them, introduced myself, and gave them the lowdown on the whole situation. As I recounted the spine-chilling events, my boyfriend arrived back home. We dished out all the deets to the police and showed them the footage. Sadly, there wasn't much they could do, as the creeps had vanished from our backyard. Nevertheless, we insisted on having the incident officially documented. One of the officers mentioned that it seemed like these folks had their eyes on something in our yard. Our backyard was a quirky collection of stuff: a concrete mixer, a couple of bikes, a kiddie pool for our dogs, and even a bike track. If these miscreants had tried to swipe any of that, I might have just rolled my eyes and let it slide. But it was crystal clear that they knew our yard layout like the back of their hand, from the gate to the camera placements. For days after this hair-raising ordeal, the fear of being home alone, especially at night, gnawed at me. The police did a quick neighborhood sweep before departing, but we haven't received any further updates about the situation. As I went about my daily routine, the unsettling feeling that something was terribly amiss clung to me like a shadow. It wasn't long before that feeling manifested into something more sinister, something I couldn't ignore. One evening, as I prepared to retire for the night, the atmosphere in our home seemed to shift. The air grew heavy with an unspoken dread, and every creak of the house echoed like a sinister whisper. I tried to dismiss it as mere imagination, but then it happened, a faint, rhythmic tapping on the bedroom window. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood frozen, my eyes locked onto that cursed window. The tapping persisted, deliberate and unnerving, like the beat of a twisted lullaby. Slowly, I inched closer, my trembling hand reaching for my phone. I knew I had to call for help, but the fear of making a sound paralyzed me. Just as I began dialing 911, the tapping ceased and the shadowy figure outside retreated. When the police arrived this time, there was evidence. An intruder had left their mark. Fingerprints smeared on the window, footprints in the flower bed, and signs of forced entry. The malevolence that had been lurking outside had now found its way inside. Despite the police's assurances of increased patrols, the feeling of being watched never left us. When my boyfriend returned from his work assignment, he found me on the brink of insanity. We decided to take matters into our own hands, fortifying our home with additional security measures, reinforcing the windows, and setting up cameras throughout the house. One fateful night, we received a notification of our security app, and then we saw it. We stumbled upon a chilling truth: a real weird-looking man, twisted with malevolence, moving silently through our living room. His eyes, filled with madness, bore into the camera, and then the feed abruptly cut out. My husband and I exchanged terrified glances, our faces reflecting the same question. How the fuck did this man enter our home unnoticed? The sheer madness in his eyes sent a cold shiver down my spine, and I whispered to my husband that he should stay in the bedroom. We dared not to make a sound, and the eerie thing was that we hadn't heard any footsteps this whole time. It was as if he was hiding somewhere, waiting to jump on us. With trembling hands, we dialed 911, urgently calling for help. The police arrived promptly. They stormed inside, searched the whole house, but didn't find the madman. We presented them with the horrifying evidence. This time, they took it seriously, launching a full-scale investigation into the intruder's identity and motives. Their discoveries sent shivers down our spines. As it turned out, this man had a dark history of violent crimes, committed a murder in the past, and was for some reason fixated on our home. Was a disturbing revelation. In the end, with the police's help, we apprehended the man who had haunted us. He was taken away, and we moved far from that accursed place, hoping to escape the malevolent forces that had tormented us. I'm a 36-year-old guy, living in a ground-floor flat in a quiet seaside town in England with my girlfriend. The eerie incident I'm about to share happened on a Saturday night when I was all alone, and it still gives me chills. It was around 10:30 p.m., and I was in the middle of watching some YouTube videos. contemplating playing a game on my laptop. I had no inkling that the night would take such a terrifying turn. You see, my girlfriend had gone out with a couple of friends she hadn't seen in ages, and I decided to stay up late, waiting for her to return safely. Little did I know that safety would soon become a distant memory. As I was engrossed in my online entertainment, an unusual sound pierced the silence. The handle of my front door started rattling as if someone was hell-bent on barging in. Panic coursed through me. My girlfriend wasn't due back until closer to midnight, and unexpected late-night disturbances were far from ordinary. Curiosity mingled with fear, compelling me to investigate. I tiptoed toward the door, and as I neared it, the rattling inexplicably ceased. My heart raced as I peered through the peephole, and what I saw sent shivers down my spine. A man stood there, his back to me, hunched over as if lost in despair. The dimly lit hallway added an eerie aura to the already unsettling scene. I was torn between confronting this intruder and seeking safety. Convinced it could be a simple mix-up or some intoxicated soul who had lost his way, I retreated without revealing my presence. I hoped the stranger would realize his mistake and leave me in peace. However, about 30 minutes later, the same unsettling rattling noise echoed through the door once more. My nerves were stretched to the limit, and I sprang to my feet, determined to face this relentless intruder head-on. I flung the door open, ready to demand answers, but the man's bewildered expression and his sudden step backward as he saw me sent chills down my spine. My voice quivered with a blend of fear and anger as I sternly warned him,
I don't know who you are, but I caught you trying to open my door earlier. If you don't beat it right now, I'm dialing the police.
He appeared to be a complete stranger, and his tired, hollow eyes and solemn demeanor only intensified my unease. He retreated towards the entrance of our apartment building, vanishing into the shadows, his head buried in his hands. My heart raced as I re-entered my flat, urgently advising him,
Just go home, man.
before slamming the door shut behind me. Now I was torn about whether to involve the authorities, so I shot a text to my girlfriend, explaining the unnerving situation and urging her to give me a call when she was ready to come home. I wanted to ensure she wouldn't encounter the mysterious man lurking outside. As I anxiously awaited her call, I kept a watchful eye on the empty apartment entryway and stairwell. The night remained eerily quiet, and I didn't spot the stranger when it was time to pick up my girlfriend and her friends. When we got back home, my girlfriend speculated that he might have been a lost soul, perhaps a bit too tipsy, searching for a friend's residence. Though her theory made sense, a lingering unease lingered in the back of my mind. I couldn't determine if the man had any connections in our building or if his intentions were more sinister. All I could do was hope he would stay away. I felt a profound sense of relief that we had always kept our front door locked and bolted that night, preventing who knows what kind of chilling encounter. The following day, I engaged in a conversation with some neighbors, hoping to uncover more about this mysterious intruder. It turned out that a few of them had spotted the man lurking around before, behaving strangely and making everyone uneasy. None of them had a clue about his intentions or what he was truly up to. In response to the unsettling experience, we decided to fortify the security around our flat. We installed sturdier locks and double-checked all the windows to ensure our safety. My girlfriend and I remained vigilant, watching for any signs of the enigmatic man, but he never reappeared. The memory of that spine-tingling night still lingers, leaving us to ponder if we will ever uncover the truth about the man who invaded our tranquility that fateful evening. I was 16 at the time, and I lived with my single dad in an apartment. I was an only child, and my dad worked 2 jobs, so I was left home alone pretty often once I got old enough to take care of myself. I was never scared of being alone, mostly because I was in an apartment complex with a lot of other people living above and below me. On this day, my dad was working both jobs, so when he got out of his first shift at 2, he went straight to his next shift. That started at 3 and ended at 11. It was summer, so I was out of school. I didn't have a car or anything, so all I could really do was walk around or stay home. I spent most of my morning watching TV, and even took a short nap. At 6, I was getting hungry for dinner. We didn't have much of anything for me to eat though, so I took some cash off the counter and walked to the grocery store. It was a 40-minute walk, but at least the weather was nice. I got something small to snack on as well as a frozen meal, then started the walk back. It was already dark out, but the whole road home was well lit and not in a dangerous area, so I wasn't worried. I'd done this plenty of times before. Halfway back though, I recognized that a man walking behind me was taking all the same turns as me. I picked up the pace, but I never seemed to lose him. The final road led straight to the apartment complex, and there was nothing else down there, but he still trailed behind me. I was nervous, but also aware that it was most likely just someone else who lives in one of the apartments. I got to the entrance and went up to my room. I knew everyone who lived in my complex, or at least what they looked like, so I knew that whoever that man was couldn't get inside if he even was trying to follow me. I took my frozen meal out and started heating it up in the microwave. About a minute went by before I heard a buzz from the room below me, then from my room, and then the one above me. It was someone at the entrance door requesting to be buzzed in. This was something people would do often if they forgot their keys. They would ring all of the rooms in hopes that someone would be kind enough to buzz them in. I waited for a moment, then heard the faint sound of the entrance door unlocking and opening. Someone let them in. I walked around and put my ear against the door, listening carefully. I heard a knock at one of the rooms downstairs. Then someone answered. It was extremely difficult to hear any specific words, but at one point I could have sworn I heard my name. My heart started racing. The door downstairs closed and footsteps started coming up the stairs. They walked right up to my door and stopped. I backed away from the door and tried to be quiet. They knocked again.
Hello? Your dad asked me to check up on you. Can you just answer the door and let me know you're all right, please?
Not to make this sound bad, but my dad would never randomly send someone to check up on me while he was so busy with work. This was definitely something bad. I moved to the opposite corner of the room and dialed 911. The man continued knocking and calling out for me as the police were on their way. At one point, he even started kicking the door as if trying to knock it down. I was terrified and locked myself in my room. Eventually, the knocking stopped. Officers showed up a few minutes later. The woman living in the room downstairs told the officers that the man said he was a babysitter and had asked her if she knew which room was mine. She said he knew my name and everything, so she didn't even think not to trust him. It's pretty clear, though, that he was probably trying to kidnap me. Unfortunately, they had no way of identifying the man aside from the woman's description, so he was never found. It still creeps me out, though, wondering how the man knew my name and that my dad wasn't home. How long had he been stalking me for? And I keep thinking about if he is still out there, watching me like a creep. Let me start by saying that I'm a woman, about 5 feet 7 inches tall and weigh around 130 pounds. This incident occurred about 3 years ago when I was in my early 20s, still a student and living in a pretty safe area. When I was growing up, I had a strong passion for martial arts. I grew up in a small rural town, so I tried out whatever martial arts classes were available as. I really enjoyed martial arts because it helped me discipline my body and mind, and it boosted my confidence. However, it had been a few years since I moved away from my country's capital to attend college, and I had kind of stopped practicing martial arts because my studies took up most of my time. Back then, I lived with my younger brother, and our place was on the first floor, right next to a military camp in a patch of woods that led to a stream. On the other end, there was a round metal ladder that went up to our balcony and then to the kitchen door. We always kept that door locked, except when our cat wanted to go outside. So when he wanted to play with his friends, we would unlock the door for him. He would then go down the outdoor metal stairs. I had to go to college almost every day, so I walked for about 25 minutes to get to a bus stop. Then I rode the bus for about an hour. After that, I walked for another 15 minutes to reach my campus. Finally, when my classes were done, it was time to go back home. I had to do the same routine repeatedly, which means I did it over and over again. You can imagine it was very tiring. I left the house almost every day at 10 in the morning and didn't return until nearly 10 at night. So when I got home, I was really tired. I don't really believe in premonitions, but I trust my gut feelings. For a long time, I felt like something was strange about that forest behind our apartment. I can't explain it well, but I just felt like I was being watched. Maybe it was because the forest was pitch black with no light, and the outdoor ladder looked like it went down into a deep hole. You could walk into that forest for about 3 steps, and it would be completely pitch black out there, so you couldn't see anything. This made me feel strange because even though I couldn't see anything, I just knew something was up. Even if I didn't have any proof, I just had that feeling. One Wednesday afternoon, I was in class with my best friend at the time, who I'll call B. A professor came to talk to us about an internship opportunity. In my country, internships were not very common, so professors had to explain why they were valuable for students. B was interested in it. However, when the professor listed the requirements, B realized that she couldn't apply because her GPA wasn't high enough. Because of this, B had a big cry after the class ended, and it was so bad that she had to call her boyfriend to come pick her up from campus. I didn't want to leave her alone, so I decided to stay with her until her boyfriend arrived, and then I got in the car with her. In the car, we mainly tried to comfort her and make her feel better. I asked if she wanted me to go to her place so we could all hang out, but she said it was okay. She didn't want to bother me with the trouble of going back home the next day. She lived about an hour away by car, which is like 2 hours by public transport, so we decided they would drop me off at my house and then they'd go to their place. We arrived at my house around 6 p.m., which was 4 hours earlier than when I usually got home. I gave B a warm hug, told her to text me if she needed anything, and thanked her boyfriend. I got out of the car, feeling happy that I'd be home early for a change. I went in through the front door, went upstairs to the first floor and put my key in the lock. When I opened the door, I called out my brother's name as usual, but sadly, there was no answer. The house was really dark, except for one light in the room where the front door opened into, and it was strangely quiet. I felt my stomach twist into a knot, because even though I couldn't hear anything, I had a strong sense that someone was there. When my instincts told me something, I always paid attention. I turned right into a hallway that leads to our bedrooms, and I saw my brother's door slam shut as soon as I entered the hallway. My brother's room is at the end of the hallway on the left side, across from my room on the right side. At first, I thought maybe my brother had just taken a shower and forgotten to grab a towel, so he was hurrying back from the bathroom feeling embarrassed. But then I heard soft whispers coming from his room. The whispers were very quiet but urgent. I still didn't have a reason to be scared, but I was really cautious. I thought maybe my brother and his friends were planning to surprise me by jumping out of his room and scaring me. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. So I started to move slowly down the short, dark hallway. Right before I could knock on my brother's door, I took a look at my room. It was a complete mess. My mattress was off the bed. My clothes and books were scattered on the floor. My jewelry box was empty and thrown on my bed. It looked like a big mess, like a tornado had gone through there. The whispers from the next room sounded even more urgent and anxious now that I was close, even though I had tried to walk as quietly as possible. That's when I finally understood what was going on. I became really scared. In that moment, I completely lost control. My instinct to either fight or run away became all about fighting. I felt like there was danger, like there were thieves, and I was ready to fight them with everything I had. I pushed my brother's door so hard that it broke open, like I was really angry at it. When I looked inside the room, I didn't see anyone, but it was also a big mess, and I knew I had heard something. So I rushed to the balcony door, yanked the curtain aside, and went out onto the balcony just in time to see one of the thieves jumping off the balcony ledge. When I think about it now, he seemed like a regular guy. He had black hair, normal height, and an athletic build. But at that time, he looked like a terrifying monster to me. I thought of him as a disgusting, awful intruder. I started screaming and saying things that didn't make much sense when I saw him stumble around, probably because he hurt his legs when he jumped off the balcony. Then he got up and ran away. He was gone, and I was safe. But suddenly I realized something.
Where was my laptop?
I quickly rushed into my room and searched everywhere for it, but it was gone. At that point, I just couldn't help but scream and cry. It felt so unfair, and I couldn't believe how audacious and cowardly the thief had been. It hit me really hard, like a strong blow to the stomach. I just couldn't stop screaming and crying. I'm not rich, and neither is my family. I had an old laptop that probably wasn't worth much if I sold it, but I really needed that laptop for my schoolwork, and without it, I couldn't finish my semester. My laptop was gone, and I felt lost. I didn't have many friends in real life, and most of my friends were online, so losing my laptop felt like losing my friends too. I felt violated, like something dirty had happened to me, and I felt like I was worth less. I was so scared that I might throw up or faint, maybe even both. I was breathing really fast and deeply, and my vision started getting blurry. I was in a state of panic and grief like I've never been in before in my life. I had a lot of tears running down my face. I called my mom to tell her what happened, and she said to call the police. It took me almost a whole minute on the phone with the person who answers the phone to explain where I lived, who I was, and what happened. Finally, they understood and said they'd send someone over. A few minutes later, my brother came back home. When he entered, he saw me in a state of panic. Then he went into the bedrooms, saw all the mess, and told me to go sit in the living room and try to calm down. I followed his advice and tried to calm myself, but I got scared easily at every little noise, and my crying got even worse. I kept apologizing, saying I was sorry for coming home late and that our laptops were gone. Then my brother called me to my room and showed me a pillowcase. It looked like it was filled with something, and when we looked inside, we found both of our laptops, all of my jewelry, my phone, and a few other things. They had been right in front of me the whole time, but I was so messed up that I didn't even notice. The police finally arrived about an hour later, but they didn't really do much. So my brother and I went to the police station to report the incident. They asked me to come in to identify the person since I'd seen part of their face. They even sent someone to check for fingerprints, but nothing came out of it. The police said they didn't even have a bag to carry the stolen stuff and used one of our pillowcases. It seemed like they were probably drug addicts. What we did find was that they had taken the metal ladder from our kitchen balcony, which made my cat very unhappy, since that's how they got in. But for the next few months, I was always nervous. Whenever I saw some suspicious people hanging around my usual bus stop, I would feel really angry, and I'd catch myself looking for the man I had seen before. I wanted to confront him and protect myself, but I never saw him or heard his creepy whispering partner again. It happened back in 2020. Just for reference, I am a 33-year-old female, and this creepy experience happened when I was 29. My friend, let's call her Emily, told me that she had a friend, who I'll call Jessica, that needed a dog sitter because Jessica and her husband were going on vacation to California. Emily knew iDog sat on an app called Rover, which is an app where you sit random strangers' dogs, walk them, you name it. I thought it was the perfect opportunity since I was in need of some cash. $200 to dog sit for 5 days? Why not, right? Jessica showed me around her house a week before I dog sat, while also letting me meet her huge husky named Max. I'm not going to lie, it was a big husky. A little overweight too, but still adorable. Jessica told me that I was welcome to help myself to whatever food I wanted. The front door also included a lock where you punch in a number code to get in, so it was pretty secure. So a week rolled around, and I showed up later on a Friday night, not too long after Jessica and her husband left the house to go to California. Things were pretty chill for the first 2 days. I was at work for most of the afternoon, went to feed the dog on my break, came back later at night, and would take Max for rides in my car. I stayed up late watching movies and let Max sleep by me when it was time to go to bed. Anyway, after work on a Monday night, I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole, and it was a guy that looked like he was wearing a black police uniform. I thought it was a bit odd, but opened the door to see what was up. "Hello, I'm looking for a Daniel," he said. "Daniel?" I thought. "Oh no, there's no Daniel here. I'm dog sitting for a friend. I've been here since Friday." Looking back, it was pretty stupid to tell a random person at the door. I didn't know that I was alone. "Oh, okay. How long are you here?" he asked.
Till Wednesday,
I responded.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, sorry to bother you.
And then he left. I was slightly weirded out and locked the door. Looking back, I should have seen this as a huge red flag as to why would he ask if I'm alone and until when I'm alone. It sent shivers down my spine, but at the time I tried to brush it off. I texted Jessica about what just happened. She pretty much just said, "Oh, don't worry about it," and shrugged it off. I thought that was weird too. It seemed like nobody was taking the situation as seriously as they should. Things were pretty chill again, up until I went to bed Wednesday at midnight. As I was laying in bed, the thought kept coming to my mind that I should make sure the front door was locked. So I got up and checked it. Luckily it was, but I still had a weird vibe. I fell asleep, then woke up to Max barking like crazy. It freaked me out a little. I said to Max,
Come here, boy. It's okay.
but then the barking got more aggressive. At this point, I first thought someone had broken in and fear gripped me. I got up and went to the living room, where I saw Max was growling and barking at the front door. I looked through the peephole and saw the same guy with another guy this time, standing there in security guard uniforms. At this point, I was creeped out. Why would the same guy come back when he knew I was alone? I didn't bother opening the door this time. Two guys I didn't know, dressed like security guards at 3 a.m. I made sure all the doors were locked. When I saw that they had walked off, I opened the door and didn't see any type of security car anywhere. I have to thank Max. I think his barking could have been what scared them off. I went back inside and fell asleep. I didn't bother telling Jessica because she was in Cali. Anyway, I'm glad to say I only stayed one more night after that. To this day, I still don't know who those guys were or what they wanted, and I haven't been back to dog sit since that incident.